I would like to continue with the next presentation, if you let me. From Romania, Alexandru Ioan University, Dr. Victor SURUGIU is going to take the floor. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Mustafa Ceylan for providing me with this opportunity to participate at this international webinar, and also to greet all the organizers of this webinar and all my colleagues from different countries. And I hope this webinar will become a platform not only for biologists, but also for people from health institution, conservation institution, customs, and others. So let me introduce you to the Can you see the presentation?
No.
No? So I will share the screen.
Dear Victor, this is Maria speaking, the host of the meeting. If you wish, I can share your presentation and I will give you remote control.
Okay, now it's okay, I think. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So now the next talk will be about the status of medicinal leech population in Romania. As you well know, its use in traditional medicine is standing for thousands of years. It has been well studied because of its use in phlebotomy, so it's on bloodletting. He is also one of the best known members of subclass Hirudo because it has some bioactive compounds found in its saliva, which is used in nowadays medicine, and also it is used as a model organism for genetics, for neurobiology, because of his large, easily manipulated neurons. And of course, in the educational purposes, it is used for dissections for many, in many of the countries. There is some historical use. The leeches are well known. In the image, you can see an advertising for medicinal leech, which were imported to the United States from Europe. And they could recognize easily Hungarian leeches, which are nowadays Hirudo verbana, and Swedish leeches, which are considered to be the Hirudo medicinalis leech. So I will start with a compilation made in 1984 on distribution of medicinal leeches made by Elliot et al., where is indicated also some places from Romania, but at that time the only one species was recognized, namely Hirudo medicinalis. The first research in Romania started at the beginning of the last century, and mainly the data in Elliot and Tulet were taken from these papers in bold from Brezeanu and Popescu, but they probably, this is the region where they sampled, but it's probably a misidentification. Probably they confused it with trocheta. It's also a large leech found in mountain streams. So other reliable data came from Scriban, Christian Manolelli, and others. So this was the distribution before. Scriban even recognized 5 varieties Sensu Mochentandon in Romania. So it will be variety Serpentina, Tessellata, Communis, Signata, and Nigrescens. So nowadays taxonomy recognize 5 species in West Palearctic. It will be the Hirudo medicinalis, which is distributed in Northern Europe, the North African or dragon or trout leech in North Africa and southern Spain or in Spain. Mediterranean leech, which is mostly confined to Mediterranean region and steppe regions in the Asia and Eastern Europe. Also, we have previous talk, nice talk about the Persian or Georgian leech, which is found mostly in Caucasian countries. And recently, Dr. Saglam and others have described a new species from southeastern Turkey as Hirudo soloki. So, I will come back to the map used by Utevsky and all to draw the present distribution of nowadays species recognized. So it will be the Hirudo medicinalis in the north, Hirudo troctina in North Africa and the Iberian Peninsula, Hirudo orientalis in Caucasian countries and some Asian, Middle Asia, and a very large area occupied by Hirudo verbana. To that moment, the samples taken in Romania were unreliable to identify them exactly as belonging either to Hirudo verbana or to Hirudo medicinalis. As we can see, northern part of Romania still lie in the area of spread of Hirudo medicinalis, but we must expect that in Romania is Hirudo verbana. So in another study, a refined study based on genetic analysis, the Hirudo verbana area was split into 2 phylogroups, the western one and the eastern. So again, the Romania falls at the middle, so there is a border between the west and east. But we have seen in the presentation of Serge that the boundary of eastern phylogroup has been moved to Serbia. So we are certain that in Romania there is a eastern phylogroup present. So the question is, which exactly is the species that is in Romania? So recent publications have confirmed that in Romania is present Hirudo verbana. Also, the re-examination of old material deposited in collections confirmed its existence in Romania. So I will start with Hirudo verbana, which is quite widely distributed in Romania and all Extracarpathian regions. We cannot find it only in the mountain areas, but it's I have well sampled it in the eastern part, in the New Delta, on the Black Sea shores, in the south, and on the west. So in red, there are previous reports of this species. Regarding the habitat and ecology of the species, little is known, but I can they preferably can be found in shallow swamps and marshes, which are usually drying during the summer, in fruit plains pools, which also sometimes are drying during the summer, ditches and canals for irrigation or for drainage of wet areas, and sometimes they can be found also in fish ponds, but without fish. And very rarely they are encountered in slow-running rivers. So these are images for some of the habitats in Romania where the Hirudo verbana can be found. It's a shallow marsh, which is seasonally drying. This is Parapotamon of Danube, so it's in the flood areas, some drainage channels, and the fish ponds, but usually they prefer habitats with muddy bottoms, with gently sloping banks, with plenty of aquatic vegetation, with with small depth and to well-warmed waters. Okay, there are some data regarding the some parameters of habitats in Romania. So they are usually can be found at altitudes less than 250 meters. The temperature range is quite large. Also pH is varying from slightly acidic to slightly acid, and very large oxygen, dissolved oxygen values. So major threats in Romania are usual the wetland habitats destruction and degradation. We also indirectly can collide pollution with the as a threat to medicinal leech, because the pollution mainly threats amphibians, which are used as food for leeches, especially in by juveniles. And because of global decline of amphibians, and also because of changing the traditional grazing practices of watering in natural habitats by there is a much reduction of food availability in the wild. So there is some local pressure on Hirudo verbana populations by over-collecting, by unauthorized persons which collect leeches in the New Delta and other wetlands for medicine purpose or for bite as for fish. And recently I have identified another major threat. It is presented here in the by two species of fish. It's a North American bullfish, which was inadvertently introduced in the Western Romania. So in all water bodies where medicinal leech encountered before, now it is missing completely. And this invasive species of fish is spreading in many areas. So now it has been found in lakes around Bucharest. And I think it's posed a major threat to wild population of Hirudo verbana. Still, it has some large population, especially in the New Delta and in Braila wetland, reaching several thousands of individuals. But usually, because of water bodies are small, the populations are numbering some several hundred of individuals. Hopefully, the status of Mediterranean medicinal leech of Hirudo verbana has changes in recent years. So it has been added to the CITES Convention and for trade of wild fauna and flora. And also it has been added to the European Union Habitats Directive. It had received its own Natura 2000 codes, besides the Hirudo medicinalis. To my knowledge, there is no global assessment of the IUCN Red List status of this species, but Serge Witewski has proposed this to be as near threatened. However, recent assessment of populations in Romania classified it as vulnerable because of reduction of area of occupancy and extent of distribution in Romania. So as conservation measures, it will be the preservation of habitats of this species, and some data on captive breeding I will come back later. But in quite recently in 2016, I have identified also one small population in a birch forest swamp. It is very small one, but it's drying because It was usually a wetland, but because of the water table lowering, there is a big danger of extinction of this population. Hopefully, I found another population in eastern part of Romania, but this is not protected area. So this will be two sites where actually the Hirudo medicinalis, the true medicinal leech, occurs in Romania. So one be in the center of Romania and one in these parts. So not in, I look for it in the western part, northern part, but it's probably represent glacial relic species because it found usually in the lakes in the forest with not so warm water as for Hirudo verbana. So these will be the habitats. It's a bird forest in the middle of the country. So it will be intramontanos area. And this one in the eastern part, a small fish pond near the oak forest. The habitats will be the same, mostly with the muddy bottom, plenty of reeds and other aquatic vegetations, and muddy bottom and still warm water. So the habitat preference slightly higher altitude than for Hirudo verbana. So there is not too many data for environmental factors, but the pH will be around neutral. Conductivity is very low because it's especially in the birch forest, the water comes from rainfall, so it's very low conductivity. As major threats, it will be the same as for Hirudo verbana. There is not collection because it's only two small populations, so I expect there will be not more than 100 or 200 specimens in these both areas. But I expect to find many other. I expect to find other places where it is occur. So there is will be a reduction of food availability for both species as major threat. So population trend is usually not very well known, but I expect that would be decreasing. It has internationally near threatened protection status. It also is introduced in some annexes and appendices of international conventions on Berne Convention, CITES Convention, European Union Habitats Directive. And as conservation measures, I propose also some ex situ conservation in leech breeding facilities. Hopefully one of the places I said is in a protected area, but there is constant water table lowering. So an assessment of its population, it is categorized in Romania as critically endangered. And there is no data on its captive breeding in small aquaculture facilities in Romania. So there was a reporting and the Article 17 and the status, the conservation status of medicinal leeches, but it still was reported as Hirudo medicinalis, is unfavorable, inadequate in 4 biogeographic regions: in continental, Black Sea region, Pannonic, and Steppe region. So a few words about the medicinal use and trade of medicinal leech in Romania. So it has been treated in folk medicine for various problems, varicose veins, arthritis, thrombophlebitis, and still now is used in some medical centers for general detoxification, activation of immune system, cardiovascular problems, nervous system problems, and circulatory problems. So on internet, it can be found on the prices varying around €1. There are some small leech breeding facilities. Some of them can produce 200,000 leeches per year. And it is, so to my knowledge, Turkey is the largest exporter of medicinal leech. On my search on CITES reports, I have found that Romania is the second, maybe, because there are only two countries which have legally permits to export leeches. The table at the shows the trend of export quotas for Romania, and they were decreasing. There are 60,000 pieces per year, but decreased to 40,000 per year. So I have no data. I didn't find any data for recent years, but I think the quota has established around 40,000 leeches per year. So came back again to the variability. Can you recognize which one is verbana, which one is medicinalis? Because they show very large variability within the same clade, within the same species. So even the search showed us that they have a very great variability. So this will be a coloration of Hirudo medicinalis, also this one, and Hirudo verbana at the bottom of the images. To conclude, in Romania, there are two species of medicinal leeches, Hirudo verbana, which is quite common, and there are very rare Hirudo medicinalis. Hirudo medicinalis is the most endangered species, and both species have been introduced in Romanian Red Data Book of Invertebrates. Both species are threatened by wetland degradation and loss, and partly by overcollecting. And there is a reduction of availability of suitable vertebrate hosts that will pose problems in the future. And Hirudo medicinalis is believed to be a kind of relic population which persists in cold places in Romania, and there is very few quantitative information on ecology of wild population of both species of medicinal leeches. And there are further studies needed to plan effective conservation strategies for both medicinal species. Thank you very much for paying attention. If there are some questions, I will be
Biz de Sayın Doktor Viktor'a teşekkür ediyoruz.
Thank you,
glad to...
Dr. Victor.
Sayın Doktor Viktor'a
Dr. Victor has completed his presentation. If there are any questions for the doctor, he will be glad to answer them.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
lütfen.
Yes, please.
So, Victor, and could you please summarize what ecological differences of medicinalis and verbana? Did you find any differences in their habitat preferences and other ecological conditions?
It will be difficult to speak about some ecological differences because there are only two populations found, but I can resume the only differences that will be some presence maybe of the forest nearby their habitats, because verbana is usually found in plains areas, so in the steppe region. But not too many differences. The habitats is almost the same. So to my knowledge, there are no ecological differences in both species.
Okay, thank you.
Evet, teşekkür ederiz açıklama için.
Well, thank you for the clarification. Are there any further questions from the audience?
Şayet yoksa ben de soru
If not, I have my own question for Dr. Victor. Well, in the presentation, we saw that as of 2018 in Romania. There will be no legal exportation quota announced on CITES. Currently, only Turkey registered information is available in CITES regarding international trade of the leech. So could you please elaborate on this problem? So what is the significance or hallmark of 2018 in terms of the trade of medicinal leech in Romania?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sorunuzu tekrar almam mümkün müdür?
Soruyu mu? Tabii.
Yes, of course. I see that starting from 2018 for Romania in CITES, there is no exportation quota. So Romania did not declare any exportation quota starting from 2018.
Okay.
In CITES records, I see that only there is exportation from Turkey. And in the year 2018, I think has some meaning for the leech trade of Romania. So what is the significance of 2018 in this regard? Why 2018?
Okay, I can expect that most of the exportations from Romania will be from aquaculture facilities, not from the wild. So in the wild, there'll be the same collection, mostly illegal collection. To my knowledge, most of the people selling the leeches, they do not rear them in vitro, but they are collecting them